The snow had been falling since before dawn, thick and relentless, turning the mountain trail into a narrow ribbon of white swallowed by towering pines. The mountain man was used to storms like this. He knew how the wind shifted between the ridges, how the cold crept in quietly before it struck hard. What he wasn't used to was seeing anyone out here, especially not her. She stood still as if the mountain itself had paused to look at her. A young woman, wrapped in a thin black dress that marked her grief plainly, her dark hair pinned back with care that spoke of habit rather than vanity. Snow gathered on her shoulders and lashes, melting against skin already pale from the cold. In her hands she held a small cloth bundle, pressed close to her chest as if it were the only thing anchoring her to the world. He approached slowly, boots crunching, not wanting to frighten her. When she finally noticed him, her eyes widened, not with panic, but with caution. The kind born from disappointment, not fear. "You shouldn't be out here," he said, raising his voice against the wind. "This storm will bury the trail by nightfall." She nodded as if she already knew that truth. "I don't have another choice." The words were simple, but they carried the weight of finality. He studied her then. The way she shifted her weight to hide the shaking in her legs, the way her jaw clenched each time the wind cut through her shawl. She was freezing. That much was clear. Without hesitation, he reached up and shrugged off his heavy fur coat, the one that had kept him alive through countless winters. He held it out to her. "Take this." Her gaze dropped to the coat. For a moment, he thought she might reach for it. Instead, she slowly shook her head. "No." The refusal caught him off guard. "You'll freeze," he said, more sharply than he meant to. "So will you," she replied, her voice steady despite the tremble beneath it. "You live here. I don't." Snow whipped between them, stinging his cheeks. He stared at her, searching her face for stubborn pride or foolish courage. He found neither. What he saw instead was resolve, quiet, worn thin by loss, but unbroken. "You're a widow," he said softly, not a question. She flinched, then nodded. "Since last winter." Something twisted in his chest. He had seen grief before, had carried it himself in different forms, but hers was fresh enough to still bleed beneath the surface. He took a step closer, holding the coat out again. "You won't survive the night like this." She tightened her grip on the bundle in her arms. "I've survived worse," she said. "And I won't take warmth from someone who needs it more than I do." The wind roared louder, as if the mountain itself objected to her stubbornness. He lowered the coat slowly, realization settling in. This woman wasn't refusing because she didn't want help. She was refusing because she couldn't bear to be the cause of someone else's suffering. "You don't even know me," he said. "I know enough," she replied. "You stopped. Others didn't." That was true. Travelers had passed her trail and turned away, unwilling to risk themselves. He looked at the darkening sky, then back at her fragile figure standing against the storm, and made a decision that felt inevitable. "There's a cabin not far," he said. "You'll come with me, just until the storm passes." She hesitated, eyes flicking toward the endless white behind her, then back to him. Finally, she nodded once. "All right." He turned to lead the way, positioning himself so the wind struck him first. The coat stayed on his shoulders, but his attention never left her. As they walked side by side through the deepening snow, he felt something unfamiliar stir inside him, something warmer than the fire waiting in his cabin. She had said no to his coat. And, in doing so, she had undone him completely. By the time they reached the cabin, daylight was already thinning, the sky bruised purple beneath heavy clouds. The storm pressed close, howling through the trees as if angry at being denied its prize. He pushed the door open and ushered her inside, the warmth striking them both at once. The fire he'd banked earlier still glowed, low and steady, like it had been waiting. She stopped just inside the doorway, snow melting from her dress and pooling on the rough wooden floor. The space was small but solid. Thick log walls, a sturdy table, shelves lined with jars and tools, and a narrow bed tucked against the far wall. It smelled of pine smoke and something older, something steady. "Safety. Come closer to the fire," he said gently. She obeyed, though her posture remained guarded, as if she might bolt at any moment. He noticed how she held herself, careful, polite, trained not to take up too much space. When she finally warmed her hands at the hearth, a faint sigh escaped her, one she didn't seem to realize she'd made. He poured water into a kettle and set it over the flames. "Tea," he said. "It'll help." "Thank you," she replied softly. As she sat, she loosened her grip on the bundle she carried, revealing a small wooden box worn smooth by years of handling. She opened it just enough to check inside, then closed it again, relief flickering across her face. "What's in it?" he asked, then immediately regretted the question. "My husband's things," she said after a moment. "Letters, a watch, proof that he was real." Her voice didn't break, but the words felt heavy between them. He nodded, understanding more than he could say. He handed her the cup once the water boiled, careful not to touch her hands. She wrapped her fingers around it, absorbing the heat like someone who had been cold for far too long. "I'm Elias," he said. "Eliza," she replied, meeting his eyes for the first time since they'd entered. There was strength there, buried beneath fatigue and grief. They spoke quietly as the storm raged outside. She told him of the land she'd lost after her husband's death, of debts and promises that vanished the moment he was gone. She hadn't planned to come through the mountains, only desperation had driven her here. Elias listened without interruption, anger simmering beneath his calm. "You can stay the night," he said when she finished. "The storm won't break until morning." She shook her head. "I don't want to impose." "You won't," he replied firmly. "And you won't make it far in the dark." The truth settled over her slowly. At last, she nodded. "Just tonight." He stood and gestured to the bed. "You take it." "I couldn't." "You will," he said, not unkindly. "I'll manage." She studied him, searching for something, threat, expectation, anything that might force another refusal. Finding none, she allowed a small, tired smile. "All right." As night deepened, she lay down, exhaustion claiming her quickly. Elias sat in the chair by the fire, watching the flames dance. He listened to the storm, to her steady breathing, and felt something unfamiliar settle in his chest. For the first time in years, the cabin didn't feel like a refuge from the world. It felt like the beginning of one. Morning arrived quietly, as if the mountain itself didn't want to disturb what had been built in the night. Pale light filtered through the frost-veined window, catching on the edges of the room and turning the drifting smoke from the hearth into soft gold. Elias stirred in the chair, stiffness pulling at his shoulders, and for a brief moment he forgot why the cabin felt different. Then he saw her. Eliza sat on the edge of the bed, smoothing her dress, the firelight painting warmth into her features that the snow had stolen the day before. She looked stronger now, steadier, though the sadness in her eyes hadn't disappeared. It had simply learned how to rest. "The storm's gone," she said quietly. He nodded and rose, adding wood to the fire. Outside, the world lay blanketed in clean white silence. The danger had passed, leaving behind a beauty so sharp it almost hurt to look at. "I should go," she said after a moment. "You've done more than enough." He didn't argue right away. Instead, he reached for his coat and laid it on the table between them. "You'll need this." Her eyes dropped to it, and something shifted in her expression. "And you?" "I know these mountains," he replied. "I'll be fine." She hesitated, then picked up the coat, pressing it briefly to her chest as if acknowledging what it meant. "Thank you," she whispered. They stepped outside together. The cold was sharp but no longer cruel. Elias pointed toward the safer lower trail and explained where it would lead. She listened carefully, committing every word to memory. When it was time, she took a few steps away, then stopped. Turning back, she asked, "Why did you help me?" He considered the question, searching for a truth simple enough to say aloud. "Because you refused my coat," he answered honestly. "You reminded me that strength doesn't have to be loud to be real." Her eyes glistened. She nodded once, then turned and walked into the trees, his coat wrapped tightly around her. Elias watched until she disappeared. The silence afterward felt wrong. The cabin behind him, once enough, now felt hollow. He went inside, paced, tried to occupy himself, but the memory of her refusal, her quiet resolve, followed him everywhere. An hour passed, then another. When he heard footsteps crunching through snow again, he thought at first it was his imagination. But then the door opened. Eliza stood there, breathless, cheeks flushed, eyes bright with something new. "I tried to leave," she said. "But every step away felt like another loss." I realized. I refused your coat because I was afraid to need anyone again. And I don't want to live like that anymore. Elias crossed the room in 2 strides. You don't have to, he said. Tears slipped down her face as she stepped closer, this time not pulling away when he took her hands. Outside, the mountains stood silent and unchanging, but inside the cabin, something fragile and hopeful took root. Love hadn't come with promises or grand words. It came with a simple no, spoken in the snow, and the courage to return and say yes.